them.
All right, we're going to bring in, we're joined now by Richard Fowler. We were waiting to see him, and there he is, joining us from D.C. You are a Democratic strategist. We're pleased to have you on the show, and of course we continue with TJ McCormick. And TJ, you have your website as well that we can follow you on.
Yeah, TJ's Talking, TJ'stalking.com. Yes, thank you for that.
Fantastic. So we've been weighing in, Richard, on Egypt, on the vacuum of power that could exist very soon if Mubarak decides to step down. Many people theorizing that today, Friday, is a pivotal point. What do you think? Who should step in? There's talk about the vice president, Suleiman, who has the backing and support of the military.
Well, first, thanks for having me. It's good to see you again, Kim.
Nice to see you, yes.
And I think, I think this is definitely trying times for the people of Egypt as they struggle for, democracy, and they fight for the freedoms that they believe in. Whether or not, what will happen if Mubarak decides to leave in the next few days, we'll have to tell. I think that's what the White House's position is. Who takes over from there? I think there has to be coalition-led. It can't just be one particular group. It can't just be the military. It has to be those that are part of this fight for freedom. So we have to have the voices of everybody in Egypt heard before we can make a decision on what the transition government looks like and how we work to maintain Egypt as an ally.
Well, it sounds like a reasonable position. I mean, they can't just have him step down. There has to be a plan of action. There has to be something that is acceptable to the protesters. So how do you go about saying, who's in charge of the protest? Well, the Muslim Brotherhood is the only kind of group, faction that is stepping up to assume a leadership position. Are you supposed to negotiate with them? Well, they're going to say, no, we think we should have the job. I'm curious as to the relationship between Suleiman and the Muslim Brotherhood.
There are a couple of unknowns, and that's one of them. I mean, Suleiman himself, although right-hand man of Mubarak, has never really had, a public outside, so I think... He
just became the VP. He was
like last week, like the other day. Yeah, and so I think everybody's doing their homework. People, hey, I had an idea, Suleiman.
How's your day? There's protests.
Have you seen Suleiman around you? Yeah, I mean, people are like Googling their fingertips off of Suleiman and Muslim Brotherhood. Everybody's trying to catch up, and so that's a question that didn't even dawn on me. What is his relationship with the Muslim Brotherhood, Who knows? And again, though, something has to bridge the gap between now and free and fair elections. Has to.
Right, that's the point. And then let's discuss a little bit, Richard, I want to get your take on the role of the White House. There's been some criticism, of course, of the president saying, did he not hit the right tone in discussing the protests and the position of the protesters, and sort of kind of pushing Mubarak out, which, is a dangerous proposition without a plan of action.
Well, I think the president's taken the right position here. Just like every other administration that we've seen in the past, the president has supported the calls and urgencies for people who oppress people who want freedom and are yearning for democracy. We saw the same thing under George W. Bush when it came to Afghanistan and Iraq. We saw the same thing under Bill Clinton when it came to the people of Kosovo. We saw the same thing under Ronald Reagan when it came to the folks in East Germany. The question becomes what are these people yearning for self-determination, and how can our alliance with Egypt stay the same while we also preserve democracy? We are a nation. We are one of the nations that are key to democracy around the world, and I think the president has taken the right step in saying these people are obviously very upset with the government. They're very upset with the oppressive regime under Mubarak, and on top of that, he served for 30 years. So I'm pretty sure that at some point in time you lose touch with your populace.
Right.
I think the president said, Mr. Mubarak, unless you can put down these protests or come to some peaceful resolution, which you've already tried by getting rid of your entire cabinet, then, it's time that these people get a chance for free and fair elections. The question now we have to ask ourselves is, what will happen when Mubarak decides to step down, and what will the transition look like between Mubarak stepping down and free and fair democratic elections?
I think the other question is, though, what is it that we as the United States are willing to do? What are we prepared to do to see to it that we get free and fair elections? You know what I mean? I think our foreign policy should be what's best for America. You know what I mean? I think that would be kind of a nice theme to go with here, and we have to be prepared too, also to as Richard just said, it'd be nice to be able to continue our same relationship with Egypt. But you know what? If there's a big change in power, if let's say the Muslim Brotherhood is elected in free and fair elections, well, then I think that's going to have to dictate how we deal with them, and we we may have to make some changes.
Well, yeah, that's the problem that we face right now. But one of the articles that we have here on FoxNews.com posted say U.S. officials giving mixed signals about the way forward in Egypt. So what they're saying is, here you have Egypt in a position where they are, teetering between, anarchy. What are they going to do? How are they going to reinstate a government that is functioning there and not have something that is far worse? People, of course, are protesting Mubarak, TJ, but are they going to be ushering in leadership that could be far more detrimental to the interests of the Egyptians and to the United States and the world at large?
Well, I think that's actually one thing that I've been missing, and I've been trying to watch as much coverage as possible. Is exactly what are the actual sentiments of these people? What is it that I'd like to hear more, and maybe as more time goes by and more leaders of these groups in these squares in these towns, maybe some de facto leaders maybe start coming to the fore, and we're able to corral them and get interviews or something. I don't know exactly what, other than, the usual.
We have a mixed message here. I mean, this article points out that usually we have one united political voice supporting the president, but there's been a lot of criticism about the way we have handled this as a country. You have Admiral Mike Mullen, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. On Friday, he said he cautions against rushing to cut off U.S. military assistance to the Egyptian government. And this came on the heels after Senator Patrick Leahy, a Democrat from Vermont, chairman of the Senate Appropriations Subcommittee on the State Department, announced that he wants to freeze U.S. aid to Egypt until things settle down. Two very different messages. Cut off the cash, keep it going.
And didn't we have like some degree of mixed message right from the outset between Hillary, actually, I think her first two statements were mixed. I think the first two things that she came out with were from a couple different points of view.
And we give them approximately $1.5 billion in just military assistance alone. So the question is, and this was the spokesperson, David Carl, told this to Fox News directly, that Congress should consider whether to cut off all or part of that $1.5 billion at the next possible opportunity if they get to vote on it, to say, hey, listen, this is something that we should consider. Do not keep funding the military till we are certain that the interests of the world and the United States are being best served. Then also, Representative Lloyd Doggett also reportedly sent a letter to President Obama urging the White House to halt financial aid to Egypt until Mubarak starts a democratic transition. Another message was sent by Senator Jeff Merkley. Lindsey Graham cautioned his colleagues not to defund the U.S. relationship with Egypt, so Graham wants the money to keep flowing. So as you see, there's a number of mixed messages, and on Thursday, the Senate approved a resolution from Kerry and McCain calling on Mubarak to immediately hand power to an interim government. And McCain had earlier called on Mubarak to leave office, said on the floor that he was concerned about the crisis turning into a genuine massacre. And of course, this has been sustained violence over a long period of time, Richard. So, these are very genuine concerns. How do you see the funding issue, and do you think it's best that he step down immediately, we've been discussing, and have somebody like Suleiman step in?
Well, I think that you're right. I think there is mixed messages coming from Washington, and I think those mixed messages are a result of the fact that, there's different information coming in. There's intelligence constantly coming in that sort of changes the White House's and the State Department's perception. And without knowing what this information is as a lay citizen, it's really impossible for us to figure out what the President and what Secretary Clinton are doing to maneuver this information. Whether or not we should cut the funding off, I have to say that I agree. I do think that Mubarak has to find some democratic process to step down as soon as he can, without the country falling into destabilization.
Well, at the same time, Richard, doesn't it seem like the Egyptians, or at least the very vocal minority of protesters that are out there on the streets, are not seeming willing to accept anything short of his immediate departure, because he pretty quickly said, I'm going to step down. I will not seek re-election. I'm dismissing my cabinet. I'm appointing Suleiman. But nevertheless, that wasn't enough.
You're right, and I think because to the people of Egypt, and I can't speak for them, but just from the information that I'm receiving, it seems as though the people of Egypt see him as Mubarak as basically the main issue or the main underlying problem in all their oppression, and it's bigger than that, as we all know, but he's the figurehead of this. At the same time, we have to let cooler heads prevail. I think there has to be some sort of democratic process or some transition government set up where we can have the United Nations step in, we can have, you know, the African Union step in, we can have the EU step in to sort of create some provisional government until we have a true free and fair elections. But until then, I think it's impossible for us, or it's wrong for us to cut off the funding that this country desperately needs. A lot of this country is poor, and they depend upon these bread subsidies to feed their families. And with the increased price of wheat by 17%, you know, it's time that we really, you know, keep this funding going so the people don't suffer while we try to find a transition government.
Okay, Richard, wish we had even more time with you. It's always a pleasure to have you on the program. Richard Fowler, Democratic strategist, always an excellent guest here on thefoxnews.com. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Kimmy. I can't wait to see you again.
All right.